Pull up real slow, pull up real quick. Burning rubber, drop the top, shorty real thick. Pull up real slow, pull up real quick. Burning rubber, drop the top, shorty real thick.
What's up everybody, it's David, and behind me I've got a beautifully preserved 1967 Oldsmobile Delmont 88 425 automatic car that we pulled out of a barn last fall. Tonight I'm doing a bit of work on the engine bay. I thought I would show you guys a couple of tricks and tips on how to really clean the engine bay and make it pop without fully restoring it, without fully repainting everything, taking everything apart and blasting it and whatever else. So now I'm going to get up and pop the hood so we can get this thing started. So here we have the engine bay of our car. As you can tell, everything is quite dirty. It hasn't been touched at all in probably 20-30 years. So everything is dirty, it's oxidized, corroded, there is rust that's kind of spread across the painted surfaces, and the engine is pretty nasty looking as well. However, we're going to disregard the engine in this video, as I'm going to cover that in the next one where I show you how to remove the heavy grease and bring the paint back on the valve covers and the rest of the engine. So in this video I'm going to show you how to detail the firewall, the fender wells, the radiator support, the radiator splash pan, and some of the chrome trim on the top of the grill as well. Heading back inside, we're going to mix up our special sauce. Notice I'm wearing rubber gloves and I've got protective eyewear there just so we don't injure ourselves. It's a nice precaution to take when dealing with chemicals like this. In the big mason jar that I'm popping open right here is oxalic acid. I will put a description of that in the comments or the description below. This is a strong acid that you can get in crystalline form on eBay or anywhere else online. It's not a controlled substance really. But if you mix it with water, you've got a nice acidic solution that you can use to dissolve rust. Normally I mix 100 mass parts water to 1 mass part oxalic acid, but in this situation it's not so crucial, so I'm just going to use what we North Dakotans like to call a bit. So as we pour a bit of oxalic acid into the hot water in the spray bottle, we are now going to mix things up with a wooden dowel to get it nice and dissolved in the water. That way we have a nice and even solution to spray in our engine bay to dissolve that rust. As we put the spray bottle lid back on, one more thing to note before we go back outside is that you also need a respirator when spraying this stuff in the engine bay. You'll notice I forgot to put one on at the beginning of this video clip, but I do have a respirator on later. This stuff really will sting your sinuses. It will really irritate your lungs and respiratory system. So it's pretty nasty stuff. It will not eat paint. It will not eat plastic or rubber or anything like that. It will eat rust, and it will eat a lot of organic matter like your skin. So respect it, treat it well, but also use this stuff liberally in situations like this because if it evaporates, it's not going to work very well. So keep it saturated. Notice this pooling of oxalic acid. The acid has turned from a clear color to a more of a yellow-orange liquid, and that is a great thing. You can tell that the acid is doing a great job of dissolving the rust and really breaking it down here. Before I go much further, I'm going to cover the carburetor up with a nice rag, that way we don't get anything down into the engine. The engine is currently running really well, and I don't want that to change at all. We can really do a lot of damage if we get acid and water down in the engine, so let's just prevent that from happening. So now I'm going to brush off the rust that has now dissolved. I'm using a stiff bristled plastic brush. This one is a bit wider for most of the larger areas, although you'll notice that I'm going to switch to a toothbrush after I get the larger areas done to get all the small nooks and crannies. Obviously don't ever use that toothbrush again. So here I am trying the oxalic acid on the hoses as well. I noticed that it didn't work very well on the radiator hose, but it is working extremely well on that heater hose, that red hose off to the left side of the engine bay. Another great thing about this oxalic acid solution is that it really doesn't react with most plating that I've noticed. So chrome trim is really safe to use with this, along with cadmium that you find on a brake booster in this situation, or a brake master cylinder cap, and those clean up very nicely. So now that we're done scrubbing everything, I'm going to put this very sophisticated device over the top of the carburetor just to ensure that we don't get water in there. And now I'm going to hose everything off so we can see the fruit of our labor and see how well this acid mixture really worked. After everything's been washed off, we can now go at it with a nice buffing rag to, of course, dry off all the water so things don't rust any further, but also to remove a light haze that is left by the oxalic acid. This is accomplished just by lightly buffing all the surfaces with this rag, and it just takes care of that haze pretty easily and leaves a nice patinaed finish underneath. Also keep in mind that this is an original condition, original paint car. It's not going to be fully restored or repainted. It's just going to be preserved in its nicest original state possible. So yes, there is still some rust left, but it is much better than it was before. So here's a close-up of the before on that radiator splash pan before we use the oxalic acid on it. And here is an after where I'm buffing the paint, buffing that haze off of the paint that the oxalic acid left. And you can see a drastic difference that solution did for us. It really helped bring what paint is there still back, and it allows it to shine again. You can wax this if you want, but I'm pretty much just going to leave it. It fits the patina of the car. Alright, so I'm really happy with how the oxalic acid worked on the painted surfaces of this engine bay, along with some other things like the hoses and other parts as well that we cleaned up with it. I'm going to be making a couple more videos in the future showing some detailing work on this car, including buffing the paint. There's a lot of nice original paint here that's just slightly oxidized. And I'm also going to be cleaning the grease, the heavy grease off of the valve covers and other parts of the engine bay as well, just to really make it pop and come together as a nice survived unit. So, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for future videos.
Pull up real slow, pull up real quick, burning rubber, drop the top.